All right, guys, welcome back to Universe Sports Talk, another remote show. I'm also not in Provo this time. Jackson's out in Virginia, and I'm just up in Salt Lake, just a stone's throw away from Provo, visiting some family. But we're back to recap another exciting, albeit somewhat disappointing weekend for BYU sports. Yeah, Jackson's overall feelings, I guess, coming off that weekend.
And well, first of all, tired. I had a
Yeah.
triple header marathon of games to watch because we had the women's game for basketball, then the bowl game and all its emotion, and then the men's game. So, just tired first off, but bittersweet. It's always sad to see a football season end, no matter the results. But annoyed, I guess, is my primary
Yeah.
my primary feeling about that bowl game, particularly. But shout out to men and women's basketball. Both got the dub this weekend. Washington State and Weber State beat two WSUs. So winning is winning, and beat them authoritatively. Now, football, on the other hand, that's
Yeah.
no bueno.
That was rough. So I guess we can just kind of get the bad news out of the way first, I guess, and then go into some positives hopefully. But yeah, BYU football taking a loss in their last game of the season, bowl game, Independence Bowl against Alabama Birmingham. They didn't lead until was it early third quarter?
I think it was early third. So UAB started 14-0.
Yeah.
And then BYU answered. It was 28-10. They went on a 28-10 run. So it was. Yeah. So wait. Is that what
it was? Was it the Algier touchdown, the 60-yard one at the beginning of the third, or was that to tie the game? That was probably to tie, and then there was one more after that to get the lead.
There was so much in that game. I'm kind of having a hard time.
No, it really was. It was. I feel like it really encapsulated the whole season, though, honestly, because you had an amazing borderline transcendent performance from Tyler Algier to get his record for the single season rushing, which was incredible. But then at the same time, defense can't tackle, turnovers, can't, don't have the energy early, try to make a comeback. And then it just wasn't enough this time. Whereas in previous games, it's been enough, but it just didn't have the juice.
Against Alabama and Birmingham, of all teams to not have enough for, they discontinued their football program 5 years ago. They lost to a team that didn't have a team 5 years ago. It makes no sense, which is why you love college football 9 times out of 10, but this is the time that really makes you want to rip your hair out. So yeah, I thinking about it. So UAB started off 14-zip. BYU goes on a 28-10 run. They're leading 28-24. UAB goes down the field and scores. BYU has a huge 4th and 4 they got to pick up. Mason Wake plays the hero again, hurdles the guy, gets the first down. And then very next play, Samson Nakua fumbles us out of the game.
Yep.
Unfortunate, especially because the Sunday Night Football officials, the guy who's in charge of replay or one of their officiating experts, tweeted out that play after the game and confirmed that it should not have been ruled a catch, which that's the biggest dagger of them all. So a borderline blown call, because on TV they mentioned that it was replayed and reviewed, but fans at the game said they never saw the officials put it on headsets. So it's questionable whether the review ever took place. Based on my bias, I'm going to say that it was never reviewed, because if the Sunday Night Football guy is saying that it wasn't a catch, I'm going to trust my man on Sunday Night Football. But just a really disappointing way to finish the season. Got to hand it to UAB. I feel like they felt disrespected. They kind of picked up on the fact that BYU didn't want to be in that game, that BYU felt better than the Independence Bowl. And, UAB was like, what the heck, man? Do you not respect us? Do you not think that we can give you a real fight? And they came out, they played angry, and they finished the fight, So Dwayne McBride kind of going mano a mano with Tyler Algier, neck and neck, ultimately finishes. Algier had the better day, I'd say, statistically and whatnot. But at the end of the day, Dwayne McBride won the game. So he did what his team needed at that time, and BYU kept going to the Algier well. He kept delivering, but when they went elsewhere, just couldn't get it done.
No, totally. And it seems like, I don't know, I feel like this isn't the first time we've had this kind of game under Kalani Sitake, where he kind of accepts that they didn't come in with the right kind of energy and that they're going to do better next time. But the issue here is there really is no next time until next year. So it's just like a tough situation to be in where like you really had to have the energy and you had to have the motivation, well before going into this. And I think you're spot on. Like that whole week before or however long it was since when we found out about the bowl, it was just kind of a weird energy around the program. And it's kind of like almost like we were just looking forward to, I mean, next season, but also at the same time, like, oh, like just wait till we're in the Big 12. And so there's a lot of kind of looking ahead that and it ended up being looking past and didn't bring, the urgency I feel like that they've brought to some other games. But yeah, overall, just kind of a weird ending to the season.
For sure. And, there's a bunch of different factors that kind of came together, stacked up, like minimal things, obviously nothing to scoff at, but also something that you shouldn't completely ignore that kind of piled up all together. Obviously, we heard reports and we reported earlier in the week that Jaron Hall wasn't a boot. He wasn't practicing. His status was questionable. And then at game time, or just prior to game time, Baylor Romney is confirmed as the quarterback to start the game. And, Baylor didn't have his best stuff. He took his first loss as a starter at BYU. You got to think Jaron Hall probably gives the offense a little more juice, considering he is the starter. He was playing his best football down the stretch, aside from 2 interceptions at USC. But nonetheless, before that, he was really on a roll coming off of his injury. So Baylor Romney didn't have his best stuff, and I had heard that he had been sick. I think he had COVID a few weeks prior, and he had lost a bunch of weight and a bunch of strength. So we weren't seeing Baylor Romney like we had seen him at USF and the first half against Utah State.
Yeah.
We were seeing a very depleted Baylor Romney. And so that hurts a bit. You're playing without James Empey, you're playing without LaChance, so you're a bit depleted on the offensive line. That's something that they've had to deal with all year. You're playing really depleted on defense. That's the area that hurt them the most, playing your second and third stringers on defense, which clearly, like I said, you can make excuses all day. But if BYU's defense can't get it done against Alabama, Birmingham with their second and third stringers, then the Big 12 is going to be a rude awakening in 2 years because your depth has got to improve there, which credit to Max Tooley, credit to Ben Bywater, credit to Tyler Batty, all played out of their minds. Tooley got burned a few times, but overall led the team in tackles. Ben Bywater might be the best athlete just overall on that defense, and Tyler Batty exploded for a huge game. I think Batty had 1 sack going into the bowl game. He had 2.5. He went full Van Noy mode, which was fun to see. But, the defense, I don't want to get into a Tuiaki debate. I don't want to you got to make plays. When was the last time you saw one of our safeties make a play within 5 yards of the line of scrimmage? Never. It never happens. Hayden Livingston got super lucky on that 1 interception. He played the ball perfectly. It tipped out of his hands. Great play by Hayden. But Mandel got burned to lose the game on the 4th down touchdown. That ultimately won it. Malik Moore couldn't do anything. Chaz Ayu hasn't done anything all year, and he's been hurt since Washington State. So that's a complete aspect of your defense that's not showing up at safety. The defensive line got pressured at it against the Blazers. They did their part, but they couldn't stop the run. The linebackers got split all over the field. You really missed Peyton Wilgar and Keenan Peely against the Blazers. Obviously, Bywater and Tooley did their part, but it's not. Those aren't the horses that you want out there against a Big 12 conference opponent in 2 years. And if you're having that trouble against Alabama, Birmingham, something's seriously wrong. And I got to thinking after the game, I feel like the defense just doesn't have any culture at BYU, and it never has. The offense, BYU's always romanticized the passing game. They've always had it's about to be running back you with Algier and Tyson Williams and Jamal Williams in the league. Offensive linemen are going to the league. They got Taysom Hill and Zach Wilson in the NFL. It's been a great offensive team over the past 30, 40 years. That's what they've romanticized. But now you look at the defensive side of the ball. Where are the athletes on defense? Where's the rah-rah defense talk? There's none of that, which is kind of ironic too, because if you look at the most successful players who have come out of BYU who are in the NFL, it's Fred Warner, defense, Kyle Van Noy, defense, Mike Davis, defense, and Daniel Sorensen, defense.
Yep.
So for a program that's put so much defensive talent and so much defensive production into the NFL, why on earth are we not hyping up the defense and creating this culture at BYU? Why does it have to happen after the fact? Why do we have to find out after BYU? Why do we have to find out after he's not at BYU anymore that Fred Warner is an elite linebacker? Why is that not happening when he's here? And so UAB for me was a huge slap in the face to that reality. That defense is getting slept on just criminally in Provo. And as good as the offense was this year, Tyler Algier had the great year that he did. Puka Nacua is great. Jaron Hall did the absolute best job he could have in replacing Zach Wilson and Baylor Romney when he stepped in midseason. But something's got to change on defense. And I don't know if that has to do with recruiting, if that's something that needs to be handled internally with the personnel that they have. But the culture on defense has to change.
Yeah, no, totally. I remember a couple of years ago, Kalani mentioned that he was taking kind of a more hands-on approach with the defense. And I don't know if that's still the case, if he's kind of maintained that. And I imagine with his new contract and the increase in funding, I guess, for his staff, that they'll be bulking up the defensive staff a little bit. And who knows, seems like after every loss this year, BYU fans have been calling for Tuiaki to be fired. So, I mean, is it within the realm of possibility? Sure. Will he look for kind of the type of upgrade that he got on the offensive side with the Jeff Grimes, right? Does he look for the defensive Jeff Grimes? I think it's possible. I don't personally think that Tuiaki needs to go. I think they can just beef up that staff and kind of prioritize development and kind of the almost like the marketing of their players too. Like really make playing defense, attractive, right? And it's tough, with the injuries they had this year. Obviously, even after the game, Max Tooley saying that he had some kind of foot or ankle injury that he played through in the game. So, a lot of factors going into it for sure. You lose a guy like Keenan Pili early in the season, you lose Peyton Wilgar late in the season. It's tough to kind of keep that consistency. And, as good as they were, the defense didn't have their version of Tyler Algier, right? And so that's just kind of where things ended at the end of the day. Great to see a good performance from Batty to end the season after all the hype he had last season. Hopefully that can carry into next season as well. But yeah, it kind of seems like now I've seen a few guys, post things about, after the season, hey, I'll be back next season. Chaz explaining his injury situation, that he's had some hamstring stuff going on, and then it was re-injured just a couple weeks ago, or leading up to this game, I believe. And he's saying he's going to be back. I know we're still waiting on official word from a few players still on whether they'll be back or not. Gunnar Romney, I believe. Lopini Katoa did say he is returning. And Tyler Algier after the game said he's going to leave us waiting until the final second pretty much. So we'll see what happens there.
And then you had Shaz tweeting out, like, if we crowdfund $200,000 for an NIL deal for Tyler, he'll stay. So if that's the asking price, Ryan Smith has got $200,000 in his couch cushions.
Yeah.
So, I personally, for Tyler's sake, just for him and as an individual and for his career, I hope he declares. His stock is never going to be as high as it is right now. And injury-wise, I mean, he's got to be thanking his lucky stars that he was the only weapon on BYU's offense that didn't have any injury trouble.
Yeah.
Obviously, he was spent at the end of USC, but if the smallest injury concern you had for an offensive player was that he was spent at the end of a demanding 12-game schedule, where he literally carried the load for most of the time, you would take that every time. So I hope Tyler goes to the league. He can make the $200,000 he'd make now is not. It's far inferior to what he would make just going forward if he catches it now. So I hope that he does. And now that Lopini's coming back, and Harvey Unga's a really, I mean, Pini's got the experience. He could come in and help out. Harvey Unga's a great personality. He's a guy that running backs in the portal would want to play for, especially seeing what Algier's done these past 2 years. So BYU is an intriguing candidate for any transfer running back. So Algier leaving is not the end of the world. I personally think Gunnar Romney is going to stay around. I don't think he had the season that he was hoping for to finish out in Provo. I think that he wants something more to end out on. And good for Gunnar. I hope he does stay, and I hope Puka stays. But who knows about Puka? He could go to the NFL tomorrow if he wanted to. He's got the measurables. He's got the film. So we'll be keeping everyone posted on that. Obviously, what we hear and what gets thrown out, but just really, really, I liked what you said about Jeff Grimes with that, because I feel like what's going on with the defense could really mirror what Grimes did here with the offensive line, where he created this incredible offensive line culture at BYU. I mean, being an O lineman is the least selfish, least sexy position in all of football. And Grimes came in and he took what was previously a weak spot at BYU and he turned it into one of their biggest strengths. Where, you look at the 2020 team, their backbone was the offensive line, and it allowed Zach to do everything that he did. It allowed Tyler to do everything that he did. The offensive line was what created everything that BYU did on offense last season. And he did that through this incredible culture of glorifying that position and glorifying those players and bringing in guys and developing them and working in magic. Then he went to Baylor and did the exact same thing there, where they're a top 10 team. They win the Big 12. And I don't know if Tuiaki's the guy who can do that on defense, or if somebody else needs to come in. That's not up to me. I'm not going to speculate. I'm not going to lobby for one side. But they have to do a Jeff Grimes style deep dive into the defense and say, this is our unit. We're going to do something different here. We're going to build something great. And we're going to have some swag on defense the way they did with the O-line. And college football is so much about culture. We talked about that, the culture that Kalani Sitake's brought in, the culture within different position groups and whatnot. That's got to change on defense. They got to glorify the defense now, because BYU is not going to win these big time games unless the defense steps up and has something more to say. Which, granted, you look at some of these games that BYU did win this season. The UVA game was one-off defensive adjustments. The Georgia Southern game was one-off defensive adjustments. Washington State, they've had these wins that have happened because they made adjustments on defense and they made plays. But then when it matters most in the bowl game, where you have a chance to really just put the cherry on top of your season, get ranked in the top 10 at the end of the year, and show the whole college football world that you are not to be messed with, you can't deliver. So something's got to change there culture-wise.
Yeah, totally. Should we move on to some other events that happened on Saturday to turn to some positive news? Basketball, alive and well.
Alive and well, yeah. Women's basketball is 9-1 now. Men's team is 9-2. That women's win, I don't know if enough people are talking about it, because they beat the number one team in the Pac-12. BYU just continues to murder the Pac-12 in every sport. So they beat Washington State. Really just good, solid victory at home. They did their part. Washington State clawed back. BYU put it away late. That's kind of been the one Achilles heel that the women's team has had this year, is they get lax in certain situations, or they go cold at certain times and allow opponents to come back in. But they always finish it out. They didn't against Oklahoma. Paisley went cold, but just a phenomenal game for the women on Saturday morning, or I guess, was it morning? It was early afternoon, I guess. My time difference was weird. Yeah. But the women's team looking good. They get Montana State going on the road tomorrow night, and then they got their little break before heading to conference play with San Diego, I want to say on the 30th. But women's team looking really good. They got a lot of playmakers. They play good defense, high energy, just a lot to be excited about on the women's team.
No, definitely. And one thing we were chatting about over text after their game was, who's kind of the most important player on this team now? Because I think coming into the season, thought probably Shaylee Gonzalez being kind of the face of the team that she is. Obviously a great talent with her, dribbling skills and passing skills. Has had some struggles shooting the ball early this season. And then, with it being such an experienced team, you've got those players who have been around forever. So like Paisley, right, as well, like you mentioned. But then also Tegan Graham, who has had a fantastic start of the season and kind of a new role, I feel like, a little bit. She's been starting the whole season, whereas she came off the bench for most of last season. And she's really kind of been the glue, I feel like, to this team, doing a lot more facilitating. And then obviously her three-point shooting has been incredible. We mentioned last week the 10 3-pointers. Once again, this week, one of the highest scorers on the team. It seems like when she's able to do well, the team does well, in my opinion, almost kind of like that like you can she's the what's the right word, like the measuring stick for the team, right? If Tegan has a good game, it's probably a good game for the team.
Yeah, Tegan's like the heartbeat of that BYU women's team.
Yeah.
I think we can make the argument that Paisley is the best player on the team, but that Tegan is the most important or most valuable player on the team. Shaylee, for whatever reason, hasn't really gotten into the rhythm that she wants shooting wise, struggling from three, which has been surprising considering the success from three that Paisley and Tegan have had. Nonetheless, she's been a great offensive weapon, just getting to the free throw line, driving, playing good defense, but you know, she hasn't really taken over the team the way she did her freshman year when they won the conference.
Yeah.
Whereas Paisley's exploded. She's been kind of the needle mover on offense. She's the one who's scoring the buckets, getting them to start their runs or finish their runs. But
I think she had a career high a couple weeks ago, or just last week.
Career high against Utah.
Yep.
All places.
Beautiful.
Which is really interesting because she's had, I think this is her fifth season. It's her fifth season in the program, right? So the women's team beat Utah her freshman year and then lost 3 straight to the Utes. So it's her last game against Utah for her career. They're going up to the Huntsman Center, never an easy place to play. And she puts up a career high. You know, she said after the game she really wanted that win. She did not want to go out with a loss to Utah, much like, you know, Lopa was telling us a few weeks ago. Yeah. And well, what a way to finish. So Paisley, that's what the best player does. The best player goes out and performs in games like that. Now, when Paisley went cold against Oklahoma, she only had 7 points. BYU lost by 8 in overtime. What did Tegan do? Tegan hit 10 threes. She set a school record for threes. She made more threes than Jimmer ever did. So just proving that Tegan is the most valuable player on this team. She's the facilitator. They run the offense through her. She's the one dishing out the most assists. They run that offense where they meet Tegan up top, and then Paisley and Shaylee kind of go around the wing, and they either get the open three that they want, or they crash down low. They work inside. They got Gustin, who's been money on in the post. Sarah Hampson's coming out of the woodwork. She had 2 clutch buckets that started a run and then Tegan goes down and hits a 3 and against Washington State. So they have a really nice rotation of 7 girls on that team with Maria, Paisley, Shaylee, Lauren, Tegan, Sarah, and Emma Calvert. I think that's a really solid 7 that they got that they can go through and get some points from anyone on that in that rotation. But Tegan, by far the most valuable player on the women's team. I'm surprised, looking back on that debate that we had over text, I'm surprised we even had to debate it because what Tegan's done consistency-wise from shooting the basketball, playing defense, and just running the offense has been so important to that team. And I think you can make a case that her coming back for the 5th season is more important than Paisley coming back for the 5th season because
interesting, yeah.
Maybe some of these shots that Paisley's taking are the ones that Shaylee needs to get into the groove shooting wise, but who's going to run the offense then? But Tegan's been able to do it all. She's been so important. Really, really excited to see what she does in conference play. And hopefully Shaylee gets the shooting together down the stretch in WCC. And that big 3 they have, Shaylee, Paisley, Tegan, it's hard to find a better trio in college women's basketball. So excited to see what they do down the stretch. It's been a really fun start to the season.
Triple G.
Triple G's. The killer G's.
That's with Gustin. Yeah. Which I want to talk about Lauren Gustin real quick. So she had her first season at BYU, first playing season last year at BYU. Breakout player. I think she was like in the running for a newcomer of the year in the WCC. One thing that's really incredible about her is like she's just so good she's like a natural talent for rebounding. Even though she's not like the biggest player out there. Sarah Hampson, for example, is obviously much taller. And it's I kind of compare it to like Caleb Lohner almost a little bit, where he's not the biggest guy out there, but it's just like his style of play, like he knows where to be and has kind of like the athleticism, I guess, to just beat out these bigger players. I've been really impressed with what Lauren's been doing, even when she's not scoring, still getting those rebounds. That's kind of what the men's team has asked of Caleb as well, is, hey, even if because I mean, we harp on him a lot for not really having much of an offensive game, but as long as he's kind of doing that dirty work and still rebounding at a high rate, that's still valuable to any team. And I think we've seen that be valuable to both the men's and the women's teams.
Yeah, I totally agree. So much of what Lauren Gustin does for BYU isn't showing up on the stat sheet. And when it does, it's at such critical points in the game. So Lauren Gustin, and she can only get better from here. She had a great breakout season last year.
Yeah.
It's her second season in the program. I feel like she's somebody who's going to keep developing and keep turning into a great, reliable weapon for BYU basketball. So really excited for her. Before we move on to the men's team, BYU women's 9-1, 5 Power 5 victories on the season. Unreal. That's just
so they're
Yep.
ranked number 19 right now, and it feels like it should be a lot higher.
And I feel like it will get much higher. They're a top 15 unit at the very least.
Exactly. Yeah, I was gonna say top 15, top 12, something like that.
Yeah, when you have how many other teams have 5 Power 5 wins in women's basketball? No one.
Yeah.
And 2 of those are ranked wins. They won back-to-back ranked wins. They had back-to-back ranked wins in consecutive days on the road in Florida. You don't do that. So they're 9-1. The best women's team BYU ever had was 2013. They started 12-1. I think this year's squad could run that number out of the water. I think you could look at like maybe a 15-1 start without looking at getting super specific into the scheduling. I think going into conference play, they'll handle Montana State easily, and then they'll get off and running for WCC play. So really exciting things happening with Jeff Judkin's squad. Better tune in because it's going to be, man, they're gonna make some noise
for sure. And then transition a little bit to the men's team. We already mentioned, beat WSU, as in Weber State, over the weekend. I unfortunately did not get the chance to watch that game, both because of some family stuff going on, and then also I don't have ESPN Plus, and this streaming stuff's getting a little bit out of control with trying to watch these games. Like because if the game's on ESPN, right, usually I can watch that, and then over the weekend I had trouble with YouTube TV because they got rid of ESPN, but then they brought it back luckily, so I can watch those now. But then you get ESPN Plus, right? So you can't always watch those ones. So I guess I just we gotta convince the universe to get us some subscriptions to all these services so we can watch these games.
Luckily, I did have ESPN Plus, so I got to get a nice opportunity to watch, and I had 3 main takeaways from that game. 4, really. Takeaway number 1, we hit the panic button too early, possibly on BYU basketball on the men's team. After the Creighton game, I think everybody was looking in the mirror, wondering if this team was really as good as we thought. And, against Weber, who's a really solid team, they're projected to make the NCAA tournament on the road. Playing up there in Ogden is never an easy opportunity. It's an in-state rivalry game. Maybe not rivalry, but it's an in-state game. They have a long history with Weber State. Damian Lillard came out of there, so who knows? They could always have another Damian Lillard up their sleeve. But we talked about Westminster being the get-right game that BYU needed prior to conference play. Maybe Weber State was, because it seemed like everything went right for them that game. And now they got to go to Florida, or they got to go to Hawaii for the Diamonds. What's a Diamond Head Classic? Yeah, Diamond Head Classic.
Yeah.
And now you're looking at BYU being the favorite of those 8 teams in that tournament after what they did at Weber State. So really impressive job against a quality opponent. So really excited that Coach Pope got the team on track there. Takeaway number 2, the 3-point shooting. They shot like crazy, 61.5% from 3. They made 16 3-pointers. Barcelo got hot late. Seneca Knight really he set the tone early. He had the game that really made people understand why he was an all-Mountain West Conference player at one point and why he was such an important pickup for BYU out of the transfer portal in the offseason. So they can shoot the 3-ball. They're creating shots for each other. They're getting creative. They're spreading the well to Nell, Johnson, Barcelo, Knight. Everyone's getting in on the fun. So these other scoring options for Alex Barcelo have really come out of the woodwork for men's basketball. Tejan Lucas was a bit quieter, but he still had 6 assists. Just really exciting to see what the men's team is doing with so many different pieces and how it's kind of an improvised sense. It's kind of a sense of improvisation among the men's team.
Totally.
Playing without Harward, playing without Baxter, kind of everybody filling in, flying all over the place, trying to get their roles. So for them to hit the 3-ball as well as they did, just a lot of good things happen when you can hit your 3s and hit them early like BYU did.
Yeah, no, totally. And that reminds me of a comment that Mark Pope made before the Creighton game, which was, we don't even know who we are, so it's going to be hard for them to know who we are, which was worrisome that weekend because obviously they lost. And then we kind of asked ourselves, okay, does is this BYU team going to figure out who it actually is anytime soon? And it's still kind of in flux, like you mentioned, right? There's a lot of moving pieces, a lot of improvisation, figuring some things out on the fly. But I was just looking at some stats on the team, looking ahead to that, as you mentioned, the Hawaiian Airlines Diamond Head Classic in Honolulu, playing USF. I was just checking out the stats for the team. Alex Barcelo obviously leading the team with 19.7 points per game. Tejan Lucas leading the team with 5 assists per game. But can you guess who's leading the team in rebounding right now?
It's not Lohner.
Not Lohner.
It's not Lohner. I'm going to guess that it is Seneca Knight.
It is not. It is Gideon George. 7.3 rebounds per game, which has obviously been helped out by a couple outlier games that he's had, where he had the double-double early in the season where he grabbed like something like 15 rebounds or something. And so that, that helps. But that was surprising to me, as we talk about
smaller sample size too, because he's missed 2 games. For
sure, missed some games, right? But as we talk about this, this team who's missing their big men, right, who would usually be doing the rebounding, Baxter and Harward, who steps into that role as kind of making sure that the paint is still under control for BYU. And I think, as we've said all year, Gideon George has been super underrated for his impact that doesn't really always show up on the stat sheet. Deflections on defense, his length, his size that helps out on both ends of the floor. And I think that's just a testament that he's leading the team in rebounding. Just goes to say once again that he's a pretty underrated member of this team.
Yeah, 1,000% correct. They're kind of what Lauren Gustin does for the women's team, where all of her contributions aren't exactly showing up in the stat sheet. That's what Gideon is doing for the men's team. And you saw that when they played UVU and he stayed back with an illness, that athleticism that he has on defense, you kind of take for granted when you watch it. When it's not there, you notice. Yeah. So really important aspect to BYU's defensive game, Gideon George. And just real quick before I move on, I have 2 more takeaways from the game. Do you think Foose slides into the starting 5 star by the end of the season?
Yeah. I would think so. Well, and I thought it was interesting. So Atiki started against Weber State, right? And I'm curious. We had talked about that potentially happening the week before because of the size issue and not having the typical center of 5, right? And to play against these bigger teams, once we get in WCC play as well with a team like Gonzaga, Atiki's going to have to grow up a lot. So I'm curious, what were your thoughts on Atiki in his first start?
To be totally honest, I didn't really notice him a ton in that game. I don't really remember him doing that much. He played 10 minutes total, 3 boards, 2 points. So I think that was more of a matchup thing early.
Yeah.
And, it didn't work out, which slides me into my next takeaway from the game, which was Caleb Lohner. Caleb Lohner had been a breakout game as a big man down low, playing as in place of Gavin Baxter. He's kind of been the poster child for BYU players having to move all over the court and do a lot of different things they're not used to with all these injuries. And we've kind of ripped on Caleb for his offensive game. He doesn't really have a bag to go into, doesn't really have any signature moves. He's just kind of a very strong, get up, undersized, just get boards, play defense, make the most of whatever situation you're in. And he had a pretty tough matchup. Their big it was a decent matchup with their big. They were talking some trash during the game, so things were getting heated. But Caleb played some really good defense down low, and he showed some flashes on offense where you're like, okay, like this kid can really get it done down low. He's finding his role on this BYU team. Which if Caleb Lohner can find his role for BYU men's basketball, they can go so far. They just got to find out what he does. And
what does Chunky do?
What does Chunky do? And Caleb Lohner, I think he figured it out against Weber. You saw that a little bit, and Coach Pope was singing his praises after the game. We'll find out more of what Caleb Lohner can do against USF Wednesday evening, but was really excited to see what Caleb did down low. Let me pull. I think he finished with 8 points, 6 boards. Let me check the box.
I think it was 8 boards. I just checked. 8 boards.
8 boards. Okay.
Yeah.
And 6 points. Did I get it flipped or?
Let me double check.
9 points. 9 points. 8 boards.
Yeah, which is solid. 4 fouls, which has kind of been an issue all season for him.
Yeah, he's gonna flirt with disaster there, but
yeah,
as long as it doesn't cost him games, I don't care. So
yeah,
And you know, I think the foul trouble is going to keep coming as he learns how to defend bigger guys.
Yep.
It's a much more physical position down low, and he's going to have those. And I think Pope would rather him learn by trial and error through picking up these fouls than ask him to play too conservative and give up more points. So
yeah,
Caleb Lohner, really impressive and really just relieving for if that was BYU's get right game, Caleb Lohner was a big aspect of that in finding the role that he needed. So that's my third takeaway. Fourth takeaway, obviously you didn't get to watch the game. I did. I had the ESPN Plus broadcast. It was the CBS Sports Network. On the call for CBS Sports Network was former BYU assistant Tim Lacombe,
very nice.
One of Dave Rose's old assistants and one of my personal favorites. I got to talk about it my first year on the beat. And great guy, great coach, great basketball mind. And he is phenomenal as a color commentator. He did a great job. I mean, he's always been a fun guy to talk to. So hearing him on the mic was a nice surprise and a pleasant surprise. You know, he was really good at what he did, and it just reminded me that he's, you know, as great as BYU TV's broadcasts are, Blaine Fowler should not be calling basketball. he blew Blaine out of the water. I think Blaine will be the first guy to tell you he's a football guy. So Tim Lacombe, great job as a color commentator. That's my fourth takeaway. Tim Lacombe should be going places as a broadcaster. So those are my four takeaways: the get right game for BYU, the 3-point shooting, Caleb Lohner, and Tim Lacombe. So
beautiful.
There you go. The Weber State wrap up.
No, that's on point. If I'm not mistaken, too, Tim is a big. He plays guitar, I think, and he's really into rock. That's all, and music in general, probably. But
he's a hard rock guy for sure. Yeah. I think he and Duff Tittle, they go back and forth on Twitter about certain bands. I know my dad went and coached. He was coaching at BYU basketball camp a few years ago when my brother went, and I think that was right before Rose's last year. So he got to be buddies with Lacombe, and they would talk music too. But Tim Lacombe, great job. If you're watching this, Tim, I don't know why you are, but great job on the mic. Hope you keep getting jobs and go places because you showed a lot of promise there.
Dang, that's awesome. We should do like a list sometime of either former or current BYU players or assistants who we think could make good, or even coaches who we think could make good media personalities.
You know, and now when we went to USC, their press box, it's an NFL press box. Clearly, the Rams were just there. Really impressive press area. But on the wall, they had this just like super impressive wall of fame. It was all their former football players who had become sports commentators. So you had Matt Lohner, one of the greatest college quarterbacks ever. He's on Fox's college, kind of their college game day thing.
Yeah.
Lynn Swan did the Olympics. He's an ABC Sports guy. Reggie Bush, you know, so just really impressive list. And then you look at what BYU did. You have Riley Nelson, Mitchell Juergens, David Nixon. I mean,
Tyler Haws,
decent players at BYU. Nothing too special. Riley Nelson actually was some of my first memories at BYU were Riley Nelson doing whatever it took to win football games and having the coolest hair for a BYU quarterback ever. So can't knock on him too much, but it's just when you look at the media people that BYU has put into the conversation, and then Blaine Fowler, just a backup quarterback with like 6 career pass attempts.
However,
it's pretty embarrassing.
I did also point out we have Steve Young and Trevor Maddich, so
Young and Maddich, so that's
we got something, right?
And a national champ. So yeah, we're not doing terrible, but compared to that USC just wall of flex right there, it was like oof. I'm gonna need Tyler Algier to be a commentator and save some face for us, but
I feel like Tegan's probably for sure gonna do color commentary for women's basketball.
She's good,
and especially because she's staying. Wait, I think no, she's not gonna stay another year, but she should definitely do commentary.
Yeah, she do. And you know, I feel bad I didn't get her name. Jerem Jordan was on the call. He was doing play-by-play for the women's game. He did a great job. I don't know if Greg should be worried about his job yet, but Jerem's definitely a worthy replacement should the day come someday. But whoever is doing color for the women's game, I feel bad because I totally didn't get the name. She did a great job. Newer stuff, great delivery, great poise. I've been really impressed by the women's games that I've seen from a broadcasting perspective. So, you know, just watch the women's games, people. You'll learn a lot about basketball. You watch some good ball, and they're going to win games. And it's going to be fun to watch. So watch women's basketball.
So looking ahead, you already mentioned with the men, they've got the the Diamond Head Classic, and then they come back to play Westminster in Provo. For the women, they're playing Montana State tomorrow, and then they start conference play. So we're kind of at that point, football over until spring ball, but basketball, we're kind of right in the thick of it as we have these last couple games before conference play. One thing that you to look forward to for listeners/viewers, next week we're going to be putting together a little bit of a year-end list of kind of top moments, top games from the various BYU sports in 2021. Crazy that we're already like less than 2 weeks from 2022. It doesn't quite feel right, but here we are.
It's a bit whack. So where do you think Taysom's performance last night will rank on that list?
Ooh,
How
yeah.
about that?
That was an interesting game. Great for my fantasy season.
How did Taysom Hill beat Tom Brady?
It was fantastic.
What on earth?
It was like best case scenario for my fantasy season because I had the Saints defense and I was going against Tom Brady. So it was just like chef's kiss.
That's clutch.
Yeah.
That was, I think, Brady's first shutout in 15 years.
Yep.
And Taysom Hill's playing on the other side of the ball. Just insane.
Just three field goals is all you need.
So now we have a big question. This is the second time this has happened. So Taysom Hill with the win last night is the second ever undrafted former BYU quarterback to beat a defending Super Bowl champion. Who's the first?
Quarterback.
Starting quarterback.
I have no idea.
I'll give you a hint. He beat the Saints. The Saints won. So he beat Drew Brees the year after the Saints won in 2010, I want to say.
John Beck? I don't know.
No, John Beck, 0 career victories.
Max Hall. Who else is?
Max Hall.
Max
Hall got his 1 career win against Drew Brees on Sunday Night Football.
Not bad.
Or it was either Monday night or Sunday night. I remember because I watched the game. I remember seeing it as a kid. But, yeah. So Max Hall, Taysom Hill, congratulations. 2 undrafted BYU quarterbacks to beat defending Super Bowl champions. Kind of a weird stat.
Yeah.
Didn't think it would happen twice, but Taysom, for his credit, wasn't that great yesterday. But he didn't have to be. He did what he needed to do to get the win, which was get in field goal range 3 times. So Congrats to Taysom. 5 career wins as a Saints starter, putting them in the NFC playoff picture at 7-7. That'd be a great story. If he, being their 3rd option at quarterback, not winning the starting job out of camp, getting beat out by Jameis Winston. Winston gets hurt, but he gets passed over. Trevor Siemian starts again, and then he sucks, and so Taysom helps in. If Taysom Hill somehow gets them in the playoffs down the stretch, that's a great story. So hope he can get it done, but I hope it doesn't come at the expense of my Washington football team. So and Dax Milne. There's 2 sides to every coin.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so shout out to Taysom. Hopefully, you can get a couple more of those wins. Cougars in the pros in general. Zach, a little bit better this week, but still. First what? Sorry.
First half.
Yeah, first half, right? Exactly.
They couldn't score.
Yeah. And then, like you mentioned before, the defensive players from BYU really still showing up. Van Noy's going to be playing in the playoffs with New England. Sorensen had a pass breakup in the end zone that was on the play that that Chargers player got injured on, unfortunately.
The celebration was a bit distasteful, but they don't call him Dirty Dan for nothing, They
don't call him Dirty Dan for nothing. There you go. Yeah.
Dan Sorensen doing just enough to stay in the league as long as he has and make all the money that he has. Good for you, Dan. Inspiration. All the unathletic white guys out there like me.
So anyway, look forward to that. Another podcast next week with send in some of your suggestions if you have ideas for or some of your favorite moments from the year for BYU sports. There were a lot. Great year in Provo, great year for the Cougars. So should be a fun one as we kind of break a little bit of that down and kind of put a bow on 2021. So until then,
Sir. Till then, everyone have a Merry Christmas.
yeah,
Hope that Santa brings you lots of BYU dubs this week for basketball.
exactly. Catch y'all later.
Peace out.